Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Pakistan's caretaker Prime Minister Mr. Anwarul Haqqaqat has said the Afghan Taliban know about the whereabouts of the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan militants, and the caretaker Prime Minister at the same time has warned that Pakistan will not sit silently as these militants continue to operate from the Afghan soil to carry out their attacks in Pakistan. The Prime Minister has also said that it is up to the Afghan authorities to decide whether they want to take action against the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan militants by themselves, or they want to hand over those militants to Pakistan. The Prime Minister has also said that if any group wanted to hold talks with the government, it would have to lay down its arms against the state unconditionally. He continued on to say that if they think that they can force the government or the state to negotiate on gunpoint, it would be better for them to clear up this misunderstanding. These important things regarding as to what is the responsibility of the Afghan Taliban and how they had been responding to Pakistan's repeated requests as to taking a concrete and decisive action against the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. He said all these things in an interview. We'll be taking up important points of this particular interview regarding Pakistan's policy towards the Afghan Taliban and banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, who has been found involved in various terror attacks here on Pakistani soil. Also, Special Representative to Prime Minister on Religious Harmony, Hafiz Tahir Ashraf, he has said that Pakistan not only prioritizes peace in Afghanistan but also places equal importance on maintaining peace within its own borders. Likewise, a couple of days before, we saw Chief of Army Staff General Sayyid Asim Munir holding a meeting with ulama and mashayikh in which he said, let me quote, that the use of force and armed action by any militia, entity or group other than the state is unacceptable, unquote. Likewise, we saw that ulama and mashayikh unanimously condemned extremism, terrorism and sectarianism, while also pledging their support to assist in the untiring efforts of the security forces in order to eliminate these menaces and bringing tolerance, peace and stability in the country. We'll be talking about as to Pakistan's authorities' approach at this point in time towards Afghan Taliban and what happens to be their responsibility regarding curbing the terrorist activities and the activity of the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan militants which are operating from the Afghan soil. And of course, the role of ulama and mashayikh in order to build a narrative against the narrative which these groups or militias who happen to be anti-state are trying to propagate in the society as far as their meeting with Chief of Army Staff is also concerned. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Brigadier retired Masud Ahmad Khan. He's senior analyst. Brigadier Masud, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Javed Siddiq, his senior journalist. Mr. Javed, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin with you, Brigadier Masud. Now, looking at these very important statements made by caretaker Prime Minister in his interview, sending out a categorical message once again. We earlier saw there was a presser that was done by a caretaker Prime Minister, and also statements coming from Interior Minister as well as by the Special Representative of Pakistan, Mr. Asif Durrani, to Afghanistan. Also, what does this whole equation depict? Is it a shift of Pakistan's authorities' policy towards Afghan Taliban? Because earlier we saw there were expectations of which there was an expression by caretaker Prime Minister in his presser also.
Thank you very much. And certainly, it was 15 August 2021 when the Afghan Taliban took over. So probably the impression here in Pakistan was now the western borders will be safe. But unfortunately, contrary to our expectation, it basically proved otherwise. And it was basically, earlier it was Chief of Army Staff, basically, he categorically rejected and he said there will be no talks as far as the Jathas are concerned. And then said if there will be talk, it will be only with the Afghan Taliban and etc. And secondly, as you mentioned about the talks held previously, and basically, unfortunately, that was one of the points when there was talks were going on between Pakistani officials sponsored and mediated by Afghan Taliban, basically. So that was the time the TTP seized the opportunity to regroup, reorganize, and get more recruits. And they were ready, basically, and behind the scenes they were preparing to go for an onslaught against the Pakistani authorities. And it was probably November last year, 2022, when they unilaterally declared the ceasefire, end of the ceasefire, and subsequently they resorted to these attacks. But unfortunately, that was our weakness. That was basically exploited by the Afghan, the TTP elements. And subsequently, when the present government and subsequently the previous government and also the chief of army staff, they basically know everybody is on the same page, and they say if in future if there will be talks, it will be with Afghan Taliban. Despite the fact our sincere efforts undertaken by the previous government, visit by defense minister, then the DGISI accompanying him and sharing evidence with the Afghan Taliban of the presence of TTP inside Afghanistan, operating from safe havens, and subsequently right from operating from targeting areas from Chatral down to Sibbi now. So despite the fact and they were given the evidences and commitments were made by the Afghan Taliban that they will crack down on extra. But unfortunately, despite their commitments, they did not deliver as expected. But so now this is the high time, as the Prime Minister rightly said, there can be talk not at the gunpoint. If there can be talk with TTP, they must surrender first, and then we will decide at what level we can have talks with the Afghan the TTP elements. And still the responsibility rests with the Afghan Taliban, because they are sheltering these about 6,000 TTP elements inside Afghanistan. So the areas we know, already evidence has been given right from Nuristan, Kunar, going down south, Khos, Paktika, and Nangarhar. These are areas basically from there operating. So the responsibility rests with the Afghan Taliban to take action. They should the commitment which they have made with the international community as per the Doha Accord, and subsequently with the resolution passed by United Nations Security General.
So, I see your partner for the interjection here. Very important point mentioned. It was because of the unilateral backing away of the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan after the truce between Pakistani authorities and this particular militant group were reached. Back in November in 2022, they backed away unilaterally, and they continue to pose even a greater threat, continue to carry out those terror attacks within Pakistan, operating from the Afghan soil. Now, what makes the Afghan Taliban keep on insisting the Pakistani authorities to go into negotiations with banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan?
For one thing is that they have the TTP and Afghan Taliban, they are the same. They have the allegiance to Afghan Taliban, Mullah Hibatullah Akhundzada. They are the same, both sides of the same coin. They are taken as the twins. So that is one factor. They have been fighting together when against the NATO and ISAF forces. So that is one factor. The second factor is they are using this TTP element like previous governments as a bargaining chip. That is one. And second, as a negative leverage against Pakistan. That is basically, this is what they are using against Pakistan, just to protect their probably their interests inside Pakistan. Basically, the way Pakistan is cracking down on the smuggling of dollars, smuggling of the goods, etc., and subsequently streamlining Afghan transit trade. This has curtailed the liberty of Afghan Taliban. They have the interest inside Pakistan. They own properties, etc. So that is one of the factors.
Right. Mr. Javed, Siddiq, what's your understanding when Prime Minister says it is up to the Afghan authorities, the Afghan Taliban, to decide whether they want to take action against the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan themselves, or they want to hand over the TTP militants to Pakistan? What is the most viable option if we look at the Afghan Taliban's perspective on this particular offer that has been given by Prime Minister Kakar?
Well, I think the Taliban's must react positively to this proposal of the caretaker Prime Minister of Pakistan. It's very unfortunate that the Afghan Taliban, the Afghan interim government constituted by Taliban did not live up to our expectations. We were thinking that once they take over in Kabul, Afghan soil would not be used against Pakistan. And that assurance had been given to us through door talks, and subsequently when our security leaders and political leaders, they went to Kabul and we had a back channel dialogue, and they assured that Afghan soil would not be allowed to be used against Pakistan. Pakistan had pointed out to the Taliban leadership that there are some rogue elements, there are some terrorist groups present on Afghan soil, and we are apprehending that they would become active again and would start operation within Pakistan or inside Pakistan. But they had assured that they will not allow their soil to be used against Pakistan. That assurance has not been carried out. That promise has not been carried out by the Taliban government. And the TTP, which Pakistan thought would behave once the American and the NATO troops withdraw from Afghanistan, they thought that the TTP elements will not be operating against Pakistan. And because their close relationship, close alliance with Taliban would exercise their influence on them not to use their soil against Pakistan, because Pakistan has done a lot for the interim government of Pakistan.
Siddiq, when we talk about the Afghan Taliban using their influence on the Band Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, so that question naturally arises when they accept or acknowledge that the Band Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan militants are present on the Afghan soil and they are using Afghan soil against Pakistan in particular. But altogether we have seen continuous denials coming from the top leadership of the Afghan Taliban. In this particular interview, Mr. Kakar has said that when the negotiations earlier with the Pakistani authorities of these TTP militants were going on, which were of course mediated by the Afghan Taliban, where were the TTP militants present at that particular time? Very pertinent question that has been raised by Mr. Kakar. So why the Afghan Taliban continue to deny the presence of TTP there?
That's an enigma for Pakistan, because Pakistan think that the Taliban would not allow them to do it, because Pakistan has supported them at diplomatic level. You know, Pakistan has been effectively, efficaciously pleading their case at the international level, at the United Nations, and to the Western countries, that the frozen funds of Afghanistan be released, because Afghanistan needs a lot of economic assistance for the reconstruction and other objectives. Despite that, I think the Taliban have not been able to deliver on those promises which they had made to Pakistan. So that is why Pakistan had also negotiated with TTP itself, so that to neutralize them. And Pakistan thought that they would not resort to the terrorist activities within the territory of Pakistan, but that didn't happen. So now the caretaker Prime Minister has made it very clear to the Taliban leadership that they should restrain these elements, because Pakistan has given concrete evidence to the Taliban government that here these elements are present, they are organizing themselves there, they are regrouping there on the soil of Afghanistan, and then they come and attack within our country. So we have suffered a lot. We have seen a surge in the terrorist activities in the last few months. They have attacked the security forces, the police checkposts, and even common people have been attacked. So this surge in the terrorist activity at this time is a worrisome trend for Pakistan. That is why I think the caretaker Prime Minister had to speak, and he pointed it out very bluntly to Taliban that the choice is there. If they want to carry out those promises, if they want to have good relations with Pakistan, then it will be in their benefit, and it will be in the benefit of both countries, because both countries want peace and stability for the prosperity and progress.
Right, Brigadier Masud, when the presence of the TTP militants on the Afghan soil is concerned, continuous denials by Afghan Taliban. Do you think they would come up with any satisfactory or a concrete answer to this very important question that has been raised by Mr. Kakar, that while the negotiations between Pakistani authorities and TTP militants back in 2022 were going on, which were mediated by the Afghan Taliban, where were they, the TTP militants present? Of course, that clearly points out their presence on the Afghan soil. Do you expect any sort of concrete answer coming from the Afghan Taliban on this?
I don't think so. I don't think so. The Prime Minister has made a valid observation, and that, look, when they took over the powers back in 15 August 2021, they released 8,000 TTP elements as well as the ISK people from the Bagram jail. So basically, they basically went back, regrouped, reorganized, and they were facilitated. And now, and secondly, when they are in denying mode, at the same time, we are getting reports daily, so and so of TTP leaders killed inside house at Bagram, in Nangarhar. So where from they are coming? So they are inside Afghanistan. And secondly, Pakistan has provided, as Javed said, irrefutable evidence of TTP getting training inside hosts. Recently, there was a video I saw. They are getting training inside hosts in Kunar using the Afghan aviation, the choppers, while traveling from one place to other. And so they are. So we have the evidence. And look, the United States permanent representative Linda West in the United Nations General Assembly, she said the presence of the TTP, ISK inside Afghanistan. Then Tom West, the special envoy of United States, he said the TTP presence inside Afghanistan. So the regional countries, whether they are Central Asian Republic, the Russians, as well as the other countries, the Iranians, they all claim the presence of TTP inside Afghanistan. And look, the attacks which basically carried, the Prime Minister has given a ratio, same time, a ratio. Out of 24 suicide attacks, 15 were carried by Afghans. In addition, this was 500% increase in suicide attacks. And secondly, 66 Afghan nationals, they were killed while encountering with the security forces of Pakistan. And according to IGP Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, 75% attack inside Khyber Pakhtunkhwa were carried out by the Afghan nationals. So there is a link. So there is a joint link, but at the same time, the dangerous development which has taken place. Earlier there was a BROS 2018 which was formed by the Indians raw, and then followed by a consortium of terrorist organization in 2020, and the latest is now in Balochistan, though they have alliance now, TTP, ISK and Baloch militants. They have joined, and especially they have an alliance with Masud Brigade. Masud Brigade is famous for the suicide attacks in Balochistan, the Balochi group. So these are the developments. So they are now covering a larger geographical area, right from, if you see, Chatral going down south to Balochistan. And then this new development of basically the Baloch groups joining and showing their allegiance to the TTP and then to Afghan Taliban is a new development in the region, which is serious.
You already mentioned that ISKP also forms the part of this particular
exactly. And no, there is evidence that this has also been mentioned by one of the US United Nations Monitoring Team report, the alliance between the TTP and the ISK. Though they have ideologically, they are very different as far as they are concerned, but still they are basically the targets, they have been divided. The ISK will target the mosque and religious leaders, whereas TTP, they will go for the law enforcement agencies. That is how now the things have been planned.
Don't you think it should be naturally worrisome for the Afghan Taliban when there is a cooperation collusion going on between the TTP and ISK? We had seen in the recent past Afghan Taliban eliminating the key commanders of ISK, but not a similar action against the Band Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. Once the TTP has the allegiance towards the Afghan Taliban, and there was an edict by the supreme leader of the Afghan Taliban also that carrying out attacks outside the territory of Afghanistan wouldn't be considered a jihad. So shouldn't it naturally be worrisome for the Afghan Taliban if Afghan Taliban taking on one side action against ISK and the TTP, which has the allegiance towards Afghan Taliban, is cooperating with ISK?
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, look, ISK and Afghan the TTP, they have the alliance and they're doing it under the patronage of Afghan Taliban now. That is one of the basic factors. And secondly, despite there's one element, the Afghan Taliban, they are afraid. The ISK at present, which comprises mostly the disgruntled elements of TTP as well as Afghan Taliban. So there is a fear among Talibans, if they continue if they go for a crackdown on TTP, these elements, they may join ISK. That is one threat, probably one of the fears in their mind. But overall, look, as with the passage of time, Afghanistan is going to become a epic center of no terrorism. No, look, Eastern Turkestan Islamic movement is ready, and its basic target is China. Islamic movement of Uzbekistan is ready for Uzbekistan. Islamic State of Khorasan is the entire region. TTP focuses on Pakistan. So yet there is another organization which has recently been raised, Tehrik-e-Taliban Tajikistan, that it has been raised in North Afghanistan in Badakhshan region. So they will be focusing on Tajikistan. So imagine, and then there is Al-Qaeda Central, Al-Qaeda in subcontinent. So the threat is real, and the threat is real. It is now up to the international community to understand and realize the real threat. It will be initially, it will be the neighboring countries, then subsequently the Central Asian republics, and then the rest of the globe.
Right, and with every single passing day, this particular threat is turning out to be grave. Now, Mr. Javed Siddiq, as this particular threat turns out to be more grave with every single passing day, as Brigadier Masud has also said, there is a responsibility of the international community, because this commitment by the Afghan Taliban was made in the form of Doha Peace Accord. With the international community, now there is the nexus of the militant groups over there in Afghanistan. They are trying to operate in all the neighboring countries. So what should Pakistan do? Ideally, first, when a Prime Minister says that Pakistan won't sit silently while banned Tehrik-e-Taliban continues to operate from the Afghan soil, and also the international responsibility of those major countries which have the stakes as far as Afghanistan is concerned.
I think, unfortunately, Afghanistan is becoming the hub of terrorist activities, and these groups present there, they pose a huge threat, not only to Pakistan, but all the neighboring countries and even beyond. And the concern that has been expressed by the United States of America and the United Nations and the UN Security Council as well, some other countries, even Chinese are worried that these elements who are present on Afghan soil, if they are not restrained and they are not reined in, they could, become loose, and they could go for their own targets. ETM, etc., and other elements which are present there, they can, pick up their targets and go after them. And the whole region will be destabilized. So I think what Pakistan has been trying to do is to persuade the Taliban, the interim government of Taliban, that they should exercise restraint, and they should exercise their influence and control over these elements, and particularly the TTP. The United States has made it very clear that they are fearing and they are apprehending that Afghanistan could become a center of terrorist activities once again. It can be a nucleus. So, once the United States and NATO forces have left Afghanistan, they have withdrawn from there, there could be a possibility that Afghanistan can again attract the foreign intervention to basically weed out these terrorists and their activities from that country. So I think Taliban must understand that the region and beyond the region, the countries, the people are worried about the resurgence of the terrorist activity in Afghanistan, resurgence of these terrorist groups, which have, the United States and NATO and other allies, they have been trying for almost a decade to basically eliminate and decimate these elements. Pakistan has also launched in the past Zarb-e-Azb and Raddul Fasad and other operations to eliminate these elements, which were operating from close to Afghan border, inside Pakistan territory, Waziristan, etc. So I think we have done a lot to basically clear this region from the terrorists and their hideouts and their activities. But if that happens again, and they are able to get a foothold again in Afghanistan and in Pakistan and elsewhere, then that will create a very unstable situation. And I think that will again, the Western countries, the United States, and other countries, big powers like China, will be justified. They will find a rationale again to come into this area and clear out this area from the terrorists of all kinds and of all hues.
Do you have an understanding there is a unanimity of view among the major powers when it comes to China, Russia, and the United States? We have seen the exchange of strong words at different forums between these major stakeholders now. Do you think if there is a unanimity among these major powers as far as the security situation and the kind of threat that emanates from the Afghanistan?
Exactly. I think the Russians, the Chinese, the United States, and other Western powers, they're all worried and they're on the same page as far as Afghanistan and the resurgence of terrorism in Afghanistan is concerned. And I think the Taliban must try and must make very serious efforts to basically rein in these elements and not allow them to use their soil, because they could attract the foreign intervention and they could justify the foreign intervention again. That will be very disastrous for Taliban, because Talibans now need to stabilize their country. They now need to bring peace into their country so that economic progress could be made in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, if these trends continue and they persist, the big powers might chalk out a strategy to intervene again, to weed out these elements from there, because they pose a big threat to the security of the region and beyond. So I think Taliban are being pursued and they are being advised by their sympathizers, by their friends like Pakistan, that they should heed to this advice and they should not allow their country to be used against the regional countries, and particularly Pakistan, because some of the leaders in Taliban, they have clearly said explicitly that Pakistan is an Islamic country. Pakistan cannot be destabilized. Pakistan should not be attacked, and we must not do this in Pakistan. But despite that, we are seeing that the terrorist activities are going up in Pakistan and they are not receding. And I think the Taliban government will be ultimately will be held responsible for this.
Right. Beginning, Masud, now when we talk about the unanimity regarding the situation in Afghanistan, the threat that emanates from Afghanistan's soil and the responsibility of the Afghan Taliban to curb that, the unanimity of view among the United States, China, and Russia in particular, do you think that exists? And if it does not, what's required for these countries to come on a single page to chalk out a strategy as to how to deal with Afghan Taliban?
Probably there is a concept of great game also. The countries, especially the superpowers, basically they follow the concept of great game for their basic interest. That is one factor. But as far as the regional countries are concerned, when we talk of the Central Asian republics and the Russia, basically now their real threat is to them. As I said, the Central Asian Republic, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, they are facing a real threat now. The Foreign Policy magazine carried in an article, the Central Asians and Indians are the new face of this IS. So their threat is there and their presence is in northern Afghanistan. So that is there. Leaving aside of the United States is almost out of the scene basically. Now the responsibility rests with the neighboring countries. And beside that, but unfortunately, we haven't seen a sincere effort in the last 2 years from the Afghan Taliban side. Quote me one effort, and last was that they arrested some couple of hundred when they were involved in the attacks in incursion in Chitral. So that was the only that time when some action was taken. But unfortunately, no, it is up to the Afghan Taliban to act with responsibility to crack down on these TTP and the other proxies operating from inside Afghanistan. That is one. Secondly, Pakistan can go for a regional approach, getting all the countries on table and pressurizing. Then they can be conveyed the cost of non-cooperating with Pakistan. So they will land in problems. Secondly, they can be asked, because Pakistan can join them in an operation against the militant TTP element inside. And if at all, despite all these, if they fail and they still continue attacking Pakistan, the Pakistan Law Enforcing Agency, the civilian, then Pakistan reserves the right to respond. Then Pakistan has the right, they can go and they can strike inside Afghanistan. That is the last option. So let's not wait for that option.
So when Prime Minister says that Pakistan is not going to sit silently,
yeah,
does he mean that to take?
Certainly, this is a tolerance level. If they continue and they start blackmailing you, and by using the TTP at the same time as a bargaining chip, as I said, basically now this what India is trying to do against Pakistan. Now look, India is trying to influence now Afghan officials, the Afghan Taliban, because directly and indirectly they want to basically entangle Pakistan, state problems inside Pakistan. That is the agenda. Second, at the same time, they want to contain China, so therefore Indian presence in Afghanistan is important. And thirdly, they want to show international community of their soft image operating from with orthodox Afghanistan country. So that is also a factor inside Afghanistan. So stakes are very high. I was reading the book written by Avinash Paliwal, My Enemy's Enemy. When Dawood was the president, he asked the Indians to keep pressure from the east. I will keep pressure from the west so that we can then dictate to Pakistan. And then Lalit Mansingh was the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of India from 1990 to 2001. He said when we saw Pakistan getting out of control, we found the counterbalance in Afghanistan. So we use Afghanistan to the maximum to keep Pakistan on its toes. That is how the Indians think, and that is their approach. So there are many factors involved in Afghanistan, and so we still expect the better sense prevails. The Afghan Taliban takes actions against these non-state actors operating the proxies, not only TTP, the ISK, the ETIM and Islamic Mode of Uzbekistan, a threat to region. The regional countries, they have already realized.
Right. Mr. Javed Siddiq, earlier, a couple of days before, Prime Minister made an address at the Mangla dialogue in which he said the issues related to Afghanistan would be start to settle the day Kabul would have a legitimate government. Now, since the Afghan Taliban haven't been able to deliver onto their promises, so that has raised some serious questions about the credibility or the kind of expectation that was associated with them. Having a legitimate government, by looking at this very statement of Prime Minister, what could be a possible legitimate government, an all-inclusive government, which the Afghan Taliban also agreed to in that Doha Peace Accord?
Yeah, all-inclusive government, yes, because Afghanistan historically is not one country, or it's not unified, or it is not in unison. It's not an entity which is basically ruled by one big tribe, because there's a tribal system in Afghanistan, and it is divided on ethnic lines, on communal lines, and on racial lines. So I think Taliban are one of these communities living in Afghanistan. So if that happened, if Taliban had been able to basically bring stability within Afghanistan, and the logic says that if Taliban wants to succeed in Afghanistan, they have to have an inclusive interim arrangement which is representative of all the people, of all tribes and all kinds of people living in Afghanistan. So that would have been much better course of action for Taliban, which they avoided. And they think they're in the same thinking mode that they alone can run Afghanistan, which is not true. Historically, it has not happened. So there is a huge opposition to Taliban present in Afghanistan.
Do you think is it because they couldn't form that very consensus among all the major stakeholders to form that inclusive government over there in Afghanistan because of the divisions, or lacking that very strength within its own ranks?
Exactly. I think
is that the case?
The wisdom says that the Taliban should look for an all-inclusive government, a representative government, and they should include all those elements who they think then can create problems for them. But they are not doing it, and they are looking at the things in Afghanistan through a prism of their own self-interest, which is very dangerous, and it is going to explode. The situation could be very explosive, and I think it could get out of control of Taliban.
How does it serve the purpose of self-interest, even if we look at that perspective of the Afghan Taliban, when they are not meeting those commitments, and even they don't form an inclusive governments, they do, that of course causes a resentment among the other stakeholders, also other tribes and ethnicities over there, and also making the entire world also turn against
Exactly. I think they are getting isolated because the United Nations, United States, Europe, China and Russia and Central Asian countries, they are now suspicious of the capabilities of Taliban to run a government in Afghanistan, Afghanistan is a very volatile country, and it is not stable, it is not peaceful. Therefore, they have their apprehensions. I think they are getting isolated, and the wisdom and sagacity suggests that they should look at the problem of Afghanistan from that angle, and they should avoid becoming isolated because they need a lot of economic assistance to keep them in power in Afghanistan and to keep the country stable and peaceful. Once the situation goes out of the control, I think they will earn the wrath, the earn of enmity of these neighboring countries as well as the big powers. So therefore, they should avoid that situation. They have been able to push the Americans and NATO out of Afghanistan. Yes, that's an achievement, but it should be sustainable. I mean, this situation should be sustained through wisdom, through a strategy, and they should not allow other powers to become worried about Afghanistan so that another intervention is justified. So I think to avoid that, they should have good relations with their neighbors, specifically with Pakistan, Iran, and other Central Asian countries, so that these countries are, peaceful with Afghanistan, and they should start extending their hand of cooperation with Afghanistan, rather than annoying them.
Right, Gary Masud, now looking at this statement, your understanding, the problems regarding Afghanistan would start to settle once there is a legitimate government over there in Kabul. That's what Prime Minister said at the Margala dialogue a couple of days before. Now, how is it doable, an all-inclusive government over there in Afghanistan, given the fact that earlier the Afghan Taliban haven't been able to live up to their commitments, and also that particular commitment, which was also part of the Doha Peace Accord, forming an inclusive government?
As you rightly pointed out, the commitment made in Doha Accord, and they did not deliver on that. That is one factor. Second, then we talk of inclusive government. Look, there is a sizable population of Tajiks, Uzbeks, Turkmens, Hazaras, and in the south, in the area of Herat, they are again Persian speaking, having affiliation with Iran. So there is a great division within Afghanistan. So the power remains with the Pashtuns. So that is one dividing factor between the various communities inside Afghanistan. So the inclusive government means giving representation to all of them. That is one. Second factor, according to international community, is the women education is very important factor that has been highlighted several times. And in addition, now the proxies, the terrorism which is now originating from Afghanistan is a threat. And then so with this and then the commitments which we made to regional countries, made to China during interaction with Pakistan, China, Iran, and also during the Moscow format, they made some commitments, and so they haven't come up to those expectations. So there's a dim chances of recognizing Afghanistan by any country unless they deliver. These are the points. They deliver, then they can get those their assets frozen and extra, and subsequently they can get more benefits. And then they can probably the countries, they will facilitate the regional countries, they can facilitate and ask other countries to recognize them. But at present I see dim chances of any country recognizing Afghanistan at present with the developing situation inside Afghanistan. But we in Pakistan, we will still say a stable, a peaceful, a developed Afghanistan is in the best interest of Pakistan.
Right, Masud, now we earlier saw there was a meeting between ulama and mashayikh and Chief of Army Staff General Sayyid Asim Munir also, in which Chief of Army Staff categorically said that the use of force in armed action by any militia entity or group other than the state is unacceptable. A unanimous view from the different ranks of ulama and mashayikh condemning terrorism, extremism, and also sectarianism, also pledging their unwavering support for the security forces, for the state in dealing with this menace and bringing peace and stability in the country. What is the role of ulama and mashayikh when it comes to dismantle that false narrative of such militias and militant groups?
I think I take this gathering of ulama and mashayikh scholars as a strategic gathering. You find ulamas, mashayikh right from Gilgit to Karachi, representing different school of thoughts. Everybody was there, and they unanimously endorse the speech which was made by the Chief of Army Staff, and they said they are ready to defend the country, every inch of the country, and they assured the Chief of Army Staff of their full assistance. So now what they can do, they can clear the doubts during the Jummah sermons and extra while interacting with the public, and they can convey the messages. So, and they were very responsible and very prominent scholars I saw on the TV. So they can play a very positive role, and the message which has been given to the people of Pakistan, that the people, the ulama of different school of thought, they are on the same page. They are with the government of Pakistan, they are with the armed forces of Pakistan. At the same time, the Chief of Army Staff highlighted the importance of the Paigam of Pakistan, which was a couple of years that was given by 1800 scholars and ulamas, and there was a decree in which they declared the killing of innocent people, the bomb blasts, suicide bombing, un-Islamic and haram. So this was endorsed by them again, and Chief highlighted the message, the Paigam of Pakistan, which was given previously, and then that must be taken again forward, and that should be explained. So probably it was the best activity in the recent past I have seen in Pakistan.
So, Mr. Javed, Siddiq, how this particular Paigam-e-Pakistan fatwa, as Chief of Army Staff has laid emphasis during this particular meeting with ulama to propagate the message that is contained in it, what's required for that in order to inculcate this very message across the society, in order to specifically dismantle that very false narrative of such militias? And
I think the Islamic scholars, the ulamas and mashayikhs, they have their platforms to disseminate this information and this paigam or message that Pakistan is an Islamic country, and Pakistan, to destabilize Pakistan. Some of the Afghan scholars and ulamas have already said that Pakistan is an Islamic country, its constitution is Islamic, and therefore there is no justification and there is no reason and rationale to destabilize Pakistan and to carry out attacks, terrorist attacks inside Pakistan. So I think this message needs to be reinforced.
What can media do in this regard?
Media is very important. It has to play a key role in disseminating this information and convincing the people at large that this activity which is being carried out in the name of Islam and in the name of religion is basically reprehensible. And I think the Western countries, they have always dubbed Islamic countries and particularly Muslims that they're a terrorist. And Islamic terrorism, this term was coined by West and Western scholars, that there is a surgence of Islamic terrorism. And we have to nullify this. We have to basically neutralize this, that Islam has nothing to do with terrorism.
What's required to formulate a comprehensive strategy as far as media's role in promoting this particular fatwa is concerned?
I think media must they should do programs. I mean, the TV channels and the newspapers and other media outlets should be very, very active in giving this impression or in neutralizing and dispelling the impression that there are some elements who want Pakistan to be an Islamic state. Pakistan is already an Islamic state. And to carry out terrorist attacks against the armed forces or security forces or police or the other people.
Right.
You know, the JUI convention was attacked in KPK recently, where you know, a large number of people were killed, innocent people. And there was an attack on another JUI leader in Balochistan. So this must be stopped.
Right. Brigadier Masud, your last quick comments regarding how media can inculcate that very message in that particular Pakistan fatwa.
Well, certainly, as I said, there is a requirement of talk shows, especially by all the channels, to create awareness. That is very important. And even the print media, they can carry out stories, and certainly the Jummah sermons can be the best suited for this.
Brigadier Retired Masud Ahmad Khan, senior analyst, thank you very much for joining in at Views and News tonight. Really appreciate that. And Ms. Javed, Siddiq, senior journalist, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.